Say welcome back. In this video, I'm gonna be talking about why sad people are happy, and just the first person that comes to mind. And again, too, this was one of the incidences that kind of just led me to want to make this channel for mental illness was actually Robin Williams, and again, there's quite a few other people. I think of Anthony Bourdain. I can't remember her name, but she was actually the founder for suicide awareness. She ended up killing herself, and so same with Anthony Bourdain and Robin Williams. And so you just look at people who are, I would say, not say in the spotlight, but yeah, they're in the spotlight. There's a lot of reasons, at least on the surface, to think that they would have lots of reasons to want to live, lots of positive things that are uplifting them. Again, too, specifically looking at Robin Williams, you look at somebody who is infamously just immensely famous. I mean, gobs of movies, just super positive, super cheerful, and you would just think the last person in the world, whenever this guy was in the room, you'd think the last person in the world that was sad was him, and yet obviously he was immensely sad. And so I think it's important to discuss, why sad people look so happy. And I know that was one thing that resonated with myself. Was I remember reading a quote of his, and I'm going to paraphrase it to a certain degree, but it was something along the lines of that the saddest people in the world do their best to make everyone around them happy because they know how miserable it is to feel worthless. And so again, that was something that resonated with me, that I knew exactly what he meant, because that's how I felt for many years. Was I felt utterly worthless, but I also felt this need to try to make people around me happy. And so for many years I played kind of I want to say a mediator or something, but a lot of times I just kind of was going from one family member to the next, trying to be there and support them and such, and try to save everyone, so to speak. And they didn't realize how miserable I was on the surface, and I wasn't asking for help. I wasn't letting people know how much I hurt from everything that I had gone through. And so that was one thing that I felt the need to explain, was that a lot of times I found that to be true. And it's not to say that if someone is talking about their pain, or someone is letting people in a little bit here and there, that they're not hurting immensely. But a lot of times, even with people that I see talking about pain, a lot of times I don't want to say it's a diversionary tactic, but they're talking about pain. But the pain that they're specifically talking about, I don't think it's their major catalyst. I think that they're talking about something that's painful, but there's something that's even more painful under the surface that they're hiding. Because, like I said, at least for myself, was that my most intimate, painful events I've hid for almost 2 decades, or I'd say a decade and a half. From talking about with people close to me, from people that have known me my whole life, from family members. And again, it's just this common theme I've been seeing with so many people who again, we don't know how sad they are until it's too late. And again, it's just important to realize what we can do. And at the very least, the first part was just simply being aware of it, simply being aware that just because someone doesn't look unhappy on the outside, just because someone looks immensely happy on the outside, that they're not necessarily utterly miserable underneath. And so again, I think because that's one of the things that I've at least self-experience with my own pain and depression, is how I describe it, is it's like an invisible abductor. It's like you're being held hostage with a gun, but nobody in the room can see the abductor. No one can see that you are in immense danger. And so that's a very scary thing to want to talk about, because again, I think by nature we judge with our eyes. Whether it's the weather, whether food looks good, or whether we're attracted to somebody, or whether someone needs help. We're constantly observing things with our eyes, and if to our eyes things seem fine, then we're not necessarily see the need to take action. If someone's calling for action, we're going to think that they're just the boy who cried wolf and simply want attention. And again, too, that's how I describe it. It's like that's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people who suffer from depression don't come forward. It'd be like if they had a broken leg with a bone sticking out, but visually everyone saw a completely fine leg but the person who was hurt. They're not going to feel the need, or not to feel the need, they're not going to feel the strength, they're not going to feel the reasoning behind why should I talk about my pain and tell somebody that I'm in immense pain and I need aid if they can't see it. And there might be a few times where they find courage to talk out. But a lot of the times, at least as I've experienced, a lot of times when you talk about your pain, you're kind of given this brush off, like it's not that important. You'll be fine. And again, or there's an overreaction of somebody trying to tell you what you need to do. You need to do this and this for to correct this. And like I said, that's one of the tricky things about mental illness and happiness and depression, is that there is no one system that's going to help everyone. There's no one step. Like I said, with a broken leg or with a certain type of injury, there's a very standard procedures of how you correct that. There are certain things that do have certain there's certain, let's say, surgical procedures that have certain choices that you can make, bearing risk and bearing recovery. But a lot of times when you're dealing with a physical ailment or physical damaging, there's a very specific laid out effective plan on how to combat that. There's no such plan and no such effectiveness for mental illness. And so again, if you look at it, just the fact that no one can see your pain, no one can see how immense and how debilitating it is, coupled with the fact that there is no one set plan, it's a recipe for a disaster. And I think that's what we're in the middle of right now. It's a disaster of mental illness, where our minds are running amok, and it's just because we weren't prepared for it. We, again, for so long, we're accustomed to tragedy. We're accustomed to losing loved ones in war and in life, and life expectancy was so short, and all these things. And as we've become more and more civil within our society, and more humane, and more aware of the importance and the value of life, we haven't adjusted our mentality to how do we cope with that. Because that's the sad truth about life, is there's only one certainty in life, and it's death. So again, it's just this inevitable thing that will eventually happen, whether it's today, tomorrow, next week, next year, or in 50. It's eventually going to take place. And again, I feel like our natural instinct is to just put it off until it's at our doorstep, until it's wreaking havoc. And then once it's here, we don't have any way of combating it, because we haven't prepared. We haven't acknowledged the fact that it's such an impact in our lives these days. So when you look at these, just what looks like immensely happy people like Robin Williams, and then they take their life, and we all shake our heads and just ask why, not expecting any answer, not any logical, and again, it's just, there's a lot to be looked at. There's a lot of mental experiences that could have that did lead to that point, because obviously it's sad of a reason. There was a reason behind it. And so again, I think it's really important for us to look deeply at our own pain, and just try to bring what we've learned and what we've experienced to the table, so that we can start connecting these consistencies of what the mentally ill mind really looks like. Because like I said, I feel like currently it's just saturated with worst case scenarios, or at the very least worst case stigmas. And that's what we kind of conjure up mental illness and depression with. And that's, to me, it's an oversaturation of that type of mental state. I think those are the extreme, minute minds. I feel like the vast majority of people suffering from mental illness and depression are very generally level-headed people. And a lot of times I think that, when our pain gets the best of us, it usually gets the best of us. I think that's just the natural reaction to when someone knows that they're suffering immense pain, is to want to extinguish themselves, not people around them. Sadly, them extinguishing themselves ultimately does hurt people around them. But that's the idea. They're trying to create as little fallout to people around them as possible by simply removing themselves from the equation, and think that that's somehow going to resolve the issue and resolve the pain. And again, I feel like it's really important for us to look at the whys and try to answer and try to analyze our pain, and try to analyze the patterns that people who seem to the utmost happiness, and see why. How can we make it to where they can still be themselves, they can still be happy. You look at a guy like Robin Williams, and it just seems like he was just genuinely wanting to make everyone happy. Even if something hadn't happened to him traumatically, I still think that would have been his nature. He was just a very positive, uplifting type person. But to me too, I think that would be what you see when you have a positive person go through something horrible, is that they're gonna desire to be that same person and be that same light. and hide their real pain and hide their real sorrow, to where it's too late by the time we know that they're really hurting. But yeah, so I hope that, and again too, it's just something to where if you're suffering silently, if you know somebody who's suffering, and or at least has suffered, just to be aware that they most likely are still suffering, even if they don't let it out, even if they don't show it to you, that there's still an immense pain underneath. And again, I think it's just a matter of trying to constantly, just be very clear that, you'll be a listening ear, that you won't judge. You're not going to tell somebody that they need to suddenly turn themselves into rehab or this step or that step, that they really just need to make those steps on their own as far as when they're ready. But when they are ready, that you'll be right alongside them to help them along, and to be that trust fall that'll catch them when life gets a little too scary, and when the process of healing gets too unbearable, or that we can just feel that sense that we're not doing this alone. And again, to just be conscious of people who have been through traumatic events, and just realize that it's something that never goes away. It's just a matter of us. We either get stronger or we get weaker. But again, too, by me saying we get weaker, I don't mean that the person is a weak person. It's simply just a matter of that our pain deteriorates us to the point where we don't have a lot of strength, and we do need genuine help. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with needing help, especially if you've been through something traumatic. It's something to where it's just and that's the thing too that I've realized, is that you're by allowing somebody to hold you up and to give you strength, you're allowing them to feel value and to feel validation with their own life and with their own path. So again, I think it's just really important to be self-aware and self-reflective, and then also to be very alert, and to be very conscious of being there for others, and trying to determine what can I do to help you, and not necessarily say this is what I'm going to do to help you. Just kind of let them know that you can be there for them, and that you will be there for them. But at the same hand, it's at their pace. It's at when they're ready. But as always, good luck and good night.